My mom secretly tried to give my newborn up for adoption because she was worried my baby would take attention away from my sister's wedding. I found out and got the law involved, and now she has been convicted. So my sister is getting married at the end of this year, and I gave birth to my son about 3 weeks ago. Everybody was happy about this, apart from my mother, and I was not even surprised because to her, nothing is more important than her darling baby, and that happens to be my little sister. I obviously got pregnant about a while ago, and my sister got engaged to her boyfriend of 3 years when I was 6 months pregnant. And anybody who understands math would know that by the time my sister got married, I would have given birth to the baby already. It would have been one thing if my sister was the kind of person who wanted a small wedding and would plan it quickly, but she wanted an elaborate and grand wedding, which would obviously take a lot of time, and she and her fiance had been quite clear about that right from the beginning. But even then, a couple of weeks after their engagement, my mom showed up at my house looking all worried and stuff, and she told me that she wanted me to do something about my pregnancy because she did not want me to upset my sister. My sister and I are not close in the slightest. She's a spoiled brat, and ever since my father passed away a couple of years ago, we have had no contact. The only reason I even stayed in touch with my mother after my dad's passing was because I had promised him that I would look after her because he did not think my sister would be up to the task. She was just not responsible enough. And even though my sister had always been my mom's favorite, I had tried my best to maintain a relationship with her until recently when she showed up at my house to tell me that my sister was engaged and was getting married. I thought that she had just come over to share the good news with me, but she then went on to tell me that since I was giving birth the same year as she was getting married, it would take away her limelight because obviously a pregnancy was a bigger milestone than a wedding. I don't even understand what that was about, and I told her that she was being paranoid unnecessarily because first of all, it's not like people would skip her wedding because I had a baby or whatever, and I wasn't even going to be invited to her wedding since she hadn't even been invited to mine because we're not friends. So there was no way that I could overshadow her. I wouldn't even be there. And she or my mom had nothing to worry about. And I'm not some celebrity. So I was pretty sure that even at her wedding, nobody would be talking about me or my baby. I thought that these were all valid points. So my mother told me that I needed to hide my pregnancy and my baby from everyone in the family and all our common friends as well because she did not want me to steal my sister's limelight. I thought that it was crazy, and I got into a huge fight with her, after which I did not speak to her anymore. I felt bad about breaking my promise to my father, but there was no other option for me because she was obviously acting silent and I was already pregnant and quite irritable. I just couldn't handle her idiotic statement. So she hasn't been there for anything after that, just been me, my husband, and his family taking care of the baby ever since he was gone. My mother wasn't even there for the birth of the child. My husband had called her that day, but she had refused to show up since she was out with my sister that day. I'm pretty sure that even if she hadn't been out with her, she still wouldn't have shown up because I'm just not a priority for her, and that's the bitter truth. She could have abandoned her own daughter in our relationship because she thought that I was stealing the limelight from my sister just by giving birth. Then I had nothing to say to her. Because of all of these things, we had absolutely no contact and I was fine with it. But then she called me up a couple of days ago, and when I did not answer initially, she started texting me frantically and told me to answer the call because she had to talk to me about something very important that happened. It was clear that she had some bad news to share with me, and I really did not want to talk to her. But then I just kept thinking about the promise that I had made to my father and decided to answer her. And I'm really glad that I did because that's how I found out that she is in legal trouble because she tried to put my baby up for adoption without our consent, and the adoption agency found out about it. It was a case of fraud and misrepresentation because apparently she had contacted an adoption agency and falsely claimed that she had the power of attorney since both my husband and I were addicts and had been deemed unfit to take care of our baby by the court. So now, as the custodial caretaker of the baby, she had decided to put him up for adoption. But obviously they easily found out that all the legal documentation that she had provided had been fake and immediately stopped the process. Now they were going to take this up legally, and basically she was calling me because she was scared about what was about to happen next. She had been informed by them that they were going to take legal action against her and she would be served in a couple of days. So before they could find out how to contact me and inform me, she decided to tell me about it herself so I would be able to help her out. Somehow she had been crying on the phone and begging me to help her out, but I could hardly even understand how she could expect me to help her when she had done something so horrible. I could understand that she wanted my sister to have all that limelight, but going out of her way to put my baby up for adoption, that was just disgusting. And I think it was pretty stupid as well because this way it's just going to bring more attention to me because now I plan on suing her too. After she explained the situation to me, I just disconnected the phone call because I had nothing to say to her anymore. I did not feel bad for her at all. In fact, I thought that she deserved this. And even worse, of course, later that day, I was contacted by the adoption agency so they could let me know what was going on and I could do the needful. I had already spoken to my husband after my mother's phone call, and after the adoption agency contacted us as well, the two of us decided that we were going to pursue legal action against her as well because there was no way that she could do something like that and hope to get away with it. So we spoke to a lawyer a day after that, and within a few days, we had filed the civil lawsuit against her. The proceedings against her are going to start soon, but given the seriousness seriousness of the situation, criminal charges have been filed against her as well, so there is little to no scope for mediation. The best that she can hope for is an out-of-court settlement, or maybe a plea bargain for the criminal charges, but even then she might be facing jail time anyway. She's under house arrest right now, but she can still contact me, and that's why she's been sending me emails one after the other and begging me to help her out somehow. At least she's been apologizing and telling me that she just got away because she had been very upset with my decision not to hide my baby in my pregnancy for my sister's sake. But obviously she knows that it was a messed up thing to do, and she's really sorry for it. I had been able to ignore her so far, but then she hit me when it hurt yesterday and reminded me that I had promised my father that no matter what, I would always take care of her, and this didn't seem like taking care of her right now. That kind of caught me off guard because I had had that conversation with my father in private, and I didn't even know that she knew about that promise that I had made. So now Ida for suing my mother for trying to put my baby up for adoption without my consent or knowledge. Update 1. I have decided not to drop the civil lawsuit against her. She deserves this. She brought this onto herself and not going to back down just because of the promise that I had made. I had taken it very seriously for the past couple of years ever since my father passed away, and I had tried my best to live up to the promise that I had made. But at this moment, it's just emotional manipulation, and it's emotional manipulation at its finest, which is why I almost fell for it as well. But using my father to defend herself, that's just low. A lot of people have criticized me for even bothering to live up to the promise for so long when it was so evident that my mother couldn't care less about me. But I don't know if you guys have ever lost a parent. That stuff is heavy, and I lost my father to cancer. So this was literally a promise that I had made to him on his deathbed. I don't know about everybody else, but that's not the kind of thing that I can take lightly. And that's why I've been putting up with my mother for so long. But this is crossing a line anyway. Now that I've made up my mind, nothing can make me back down. And even my husband thinks that I have made the right call. I'm not even asking for a lot of money one. I just want her to pay whatever I have spent on her in the past couple of years, because I have been taking care of her since my sister wouldn't spend even $1 on her, to be fair to her, though she doesn't spend any money on anybody apart from herself, so it's not very surprising. And it's probably the reason why my father had asked me to be there for my mom. But I don't think he could have seen something like this happening at any point in the future. I'm sure that he will forgive me for this. And even if he doesn't, I still have to do it for my own sake. I also thought it through her. Having to pay back the money that she owes me is not going to cost her everything I know, for a fact that my father had not only left her the house, but a substantial sum of money as well, so she will be able to get by. And even apart from that, she has her brother to take care of her after me. And even if she does lose everything because of this loss, it's still not going to be any of my concern because I have tried my very best, and it's not been enough, and I don't think anything will ever be enough for her. I am done trying to be a good daughter. I'm simply a mother, and that's my only priority update too. It has been a few weeks since my last update, and we are currently in the process of mediating, since everybody wants to settle a civil lawsuit out of court. It hasn't been going well so far, and we have had to terminate every session after a while because my mother would get too emotional and would start screaming and stuff. I don't know if that's her strategy or if she's actually losing it. Whatever the case is, it's just delaying the inevitable, and I don't think she realizes that there is no way out of this for her. My uncle has also reached out to me to try and convince me to back off, and he has told me that the amount that I'm demanding from her as a settlement is way too huge and unfair. He has also brought up the fact that she was the one who had raised me from one when I was a baby, and this is really ungrateful of me not to forgive her for one stupid little mistake. But that's the thing, it was not a stupid little mistake. She had literally with false documentation, and I don't think if it had been a heat of the moment session, she would have been able to come up with that. It was all premeditated, and that's the scary part, because some fluke, if the adoption agency hadn't done its due diligence, she probably wouldn't even have been caught. And the more that I think about the situation, the less forgiving I feel, and I feel like no amount of money is ever going to make up for what she did. At least I'm being kind enough to only demand whatever I had spent on her so far, and not a single dollar more. Obviously that's not mentioned anywhere in the paperwork, so he wouldn't know that. But even when I mentioned that to him, he still told me that it was extremely unfair of me to do so. After a while, I started getting agitated, and I really did not want to fight with him, because so far my uncle and I have not had a bad relationship, and I do not want to ruin that. But since he seemed to be bent on doing exactly that, I started fighting with him as well. I told him that if he cared so much about his sister, then maybe he should just bail her out by offering to bear the cost of the settlement himself, and then we could be done with this a lot quicker. And that's when he started yelling at me and stuff, calling me all sorts of names, and I ended the phone call because clearly there was no point in speaking to him anymore. I don't even understand how anybody can find themselves to defend her right now, given the circumstances. On one hand, I had my uncle, and on the other, I have my sister, who has been insufferable ever since she found out about the lawsuit against our mother. I don't know why, but she has been making me out to be the villain in this situation, claiming that I'm doing this all because I want to get back at her and my mom for not paying me enough attention. At least my uncle had the guts to come speak to me directly. She has been speaking behind my back to everybody that we know, and that's how everybody in the family has been able to find out about the lawsuit and stuff. I really did not want that happen, because I did not want to answer questions, since this is really personal and kind of disturbing, and I didn't didn't think that it was necessary for me to talk to people about this, but since she has been talking everybody's ears off about it, people have had a lot of questions and have been reaching out to me as well. So even though I did not want to bring it up with anyone right now, I'm having to answer questions, and the only reason I'm even doing it is because at some point I might have to get them to testify if this goes to court. So I'm just consoling myself by telling myself that this was bound to come out at some point at the other. So better now than later. But the bigger problem is the narrative that my sister has been setting. Like, I got vindictive and stuff, and that's why I am pursuing this legally. I don't even think she understands the graph of what our mother has been trying to do. And this is not some sort of sibling rivalry that is manifesting itself in the form of lawsuits and whatever. I don't even understand how somebody can be so stupid and self-involved, but well, it's my sister, so it's not very surprising after all. She is my mother's true daughter anyway. I've been speaking to the rest of my family, and it's kind of funny that this whole thing had actually started because my mother wanted my sister's wedding to be the event of the year, and that's why she wanted me to hide my pregnancy and my baby and stuff. But now, because of her own actions, this is going to be the family highlight for a long time to come. Not just this year, I hate to acknowledge it, but it's pretty scandalous from a gossip point of view. And if I myself had not been involved in this directly, I probably would have found it pretty juicy as well. Sounds a bit trashy to say out loud, but it's really just poetic justice for my sister, because now not even her wedding can top something like this. Update 3. Hi, so my mother has agreed to our terms and enough. We will be receiving our settlement money, but apart from that, she is still under trial for her criminal charges right now. She and her lawyer are doing their best to get her out of it without any jail time. But for now, it's looking bleak. From what I know, I have already been asked to testify by the prosecution, and so have the people from the adoption agency. So let's see how that goes. Apart from that, even my sister and a couple of other people from the family who are close to us have also been contacted. It has been a couple of weeks since our last update, and so far things have been going well for our family. We even managed to sneak in a short weekend trip with our son so we could go see his great-grandparents. I don't mean my grandparents, they're not around anymore. But thankfully, my husband's grandparents are still around. And when we went to see them and spoke to them about whatever was going on in our family, they told me that I was doing the right thing by stepping up for my child. I even shared the guilt that I was feeling because I had broken my promise to my father. But they told me that I had nothing to feel bad about, because if my father had still been around, he would have likely told me to go for it. This situation is just insane. That really helped me feel a lot better about everything. And I guess I truly needed a change of scenery. When I returned, I felt much more refreshed, although the whole experience had been quite stressful for me. Even though my mother and I had our differences in the past, it had never reached this extreme. During our last few sessions with the lawyers, she probably realized that yelling and cutting off the meetings wouldn't solve anything and would only lead to court, which would likely turn out worse for her. Likely, under the advice of her lawyer, she decided to behave and let the lawyer speak on her behalf. She barely looked at me, and when she did, it was a quick glance, as though she couldn't bear to even face me. I think that's for the best, because she no longer deserves the right to look at me. My uncle and my sister are still actively spreading negativity about me in the family, but honestly, it doesn't affect me. Anyone who wants to be on my side will be, and those who prefer gossip will stay on the sidelines and won't be a real threat. I'm secure enough to know that just because they say things about me, it doesn't make them true. Been just over a month since my last update. My mother agreed to my terms, and a couple of weeks ago, our settlement money finally came through. We've decided to set it aside for our son's future since we don't need it right now. We're content with it because, in the end, this is the money I had spent on my mother after my father passed. My sister knows this, but despite that, she showed up the other day, accusing me of ruining her wedding. Apparently, our mother had promised to contribute to it. Now that I had sued her and taken back the money, my mother won't be able to fulfill that promise. Somehow, she thinks this is all my fault. It was ridiculous because, while yelling at me, she even admitted that I had taken back the money she had spent, which meant it was originally mine. She was clearly aware of the situation, but still thought it was right to yell at me instead of questioning why any of this had happened. When she showed up, I didn't let her in and spoke to her from the door. As soon as she began yelling, I slammed the door shut because I didn't need to deal with that drama. I was already busy with work, even though I was on maternity leave and was trying to work from home to avoid being overwhelmed when I returned to the office. Plus, I had my son to care for, so I really didn't have time for this. Even after I shut the door, she stayed outside, screaming about how unfair everything was for her. Eventually, I got fed up and called the cops. Within minutes, they arrived, and while they were escorting her away, she cursed at me so loudly that even the neighbors, who had probably been watching from behind their curtains, came outside to see what was happening. It was incredibly embarrassing. While she was yelling, she made some very disturbing comments about me and my child, which I won't repeat, but they were threatening and made me feel uncomfortable. I had already called my husband and told him what was going on, so he came home early. As the police were taking her away, one of the officers suggested that we file for a restraining order, as clearly something was wrong with her. We've decided that this would be a good idea because I don't feel safe anymore. Not only does she know where I live, but she also knows how to contact me in various ways, and if she wanted to make me feel uncomfortable, she could do so easily. I'm not saying she will act on her threats, but there are other ways she could intimidate me. I'm scared because I'm a mother now, and I don't want incidents like this happening again. After a long long discussion with my husband, we agreed that we would move. I was already planning to change my phone number and contact details so that people could only reach me if they had a good relationship with me first. It's not just about my sister. I've been getting a lot of calls and messages from people who only want gossip, and it's getting annoying. So changing everything seemed like a good idea. The last thing I need is visitors who only want to talk about this drama. My husband is doing well, and if necessary, we can ask my in-laws for support, but we will be moving, and we will file for a restraining order against my sister because it's clear she's unhinged and I don't want her around. Things have been financially challenging with lawyer fees and a newborn, but despite that, when I think about my son, I feel it's all worth it. Honestly, I'm just really tired of everything, but my husband and son are my motivation to keep going and improve. I feel incredibly fortunate to have a partner who understands me so well, and I'm equally thankful for my in-laws who have stood by me throughout all of this. After my father passed, it was mostly my in-laws who supported me more than my own mother. Not everyone is lucky enough to have such wonderful in-laws, so I am very grateful for them. It's been a messy, exhausting couple of months, and I really hope it comes to an end soon. Update 5. Last week, my mother's trial ended, and she was convicted on all charges. As a first-time offender, she'll have to pay a large fine and restitution to both the adoption agency and to me, along with completing several hours of community service. She managed to avoid jail time, but will have to attend court-ordered mental health treatment in a rehabilitation facility. As her lawyer argued, she's been struggling with psychological issues. I haven't been in contact with her since she agreed to the terms of our civil lawsuit, and we reached a settlement. I heard about the verdict from a few family members, and while it's fair enough, I also got a restraining order against my sister shortly after my last update, which was another win for me. We're in the middle of moving houses, which is stressful, but we're managing. Especially with the money coming in soon. We may not even need to ask my in-laws for help, and we won't have to dip into the settlement we set aside for our son, so everything is falling into place for us. Even though my mother got lucky legally, she hasn't been so fortunate in her personal life. I've been hearing a lot of gossip and even received screenshots of my sister's latest social media post, where she's denouncing her mother's actions. She now claims she had no idea what was going on until recently, and that she disagrees with her mother's behavior and believes she should be convicted. It's funny because before everything went wrong, she was strongly on our mother's side. She's likely saying all this because her fiancé and his family weren't comfortable with the idea of him marrying into a family like ours, which makes sense. They were even considering postponing the wedding, which is probably why she cut ties with our mother in such a public way. It's unfortunate for our mom, considering how dedicated she was to my sister. But honestly, she got what she deserved. I don't feel bad for her. Now that we're moving, I'm cutting ties with these people completely, and I honestly can't wait.